Alright boys, today we are going to go over the patch notes of the split 3 and goddamn there is a lot. Okay, so let's go on over this. So the first change they're doing is they're removing 5 to 15% stat efficiency from every legendary item in the game, which is huge. That is a huge amount of stats. These changes are going to get us several important benefits, slowing down combat pacing, which is huge. Oh my god, dude. League of Legends has been too much one-shots overall. And now it's gonna, slow down the game. Less snowballing. And the champions themselves are basically gonna take up more of the power budget, is what they're saying here, which means the champion base stats are gonna be more important throughout the game as well, right? No. We don't see anyone load into the game and get excited to play Infinity Edge. They want to play Jinx area. So with this in mind, you can think of the change as a durability update, in the sense that we want more time for players to play out their champions' gameplay fantasy to put more emphasis on champions than items. So like on one hand, I like this. On one hand, I don't. But I do get excited for building certain items. Like for example, if I'm playing a mage, I want to build Leandries because Leandries is a lot of fun to use. Seeing people just burn down, Players have significantly improved at League over the past 15 years, and generally speaking, really like it when they're able to use those skills to beat their opponents. Pretty big fans of skill mattering too. That said, we should explain why nerfing almost every item in the game is related to that. League had found itself in a state where the amount of power champions earned from items rapidly outpaced other sources like experience and team-wide objectives like Dragon. True. While we hadn't directly increased the amount of gold in the game that much over the years, in fact, we've taken it away from things like Dragons, true. Dragon used to give global gold instead of stats. You all got a lot better at things like last hitting minions and also staying alive in order to last hit those minions. If you want to feel really skilled, look at old world matches and compare your farm to the world's best from 13 years ago. In the final game of 2012 World Finals, the ADC had 133 and 165 million kills at 20 minutes. They were both on one complete legendary and weren't remotely close to their second. Nowadays, that's below average for platinum players, let alone the world's best. Why is this a problem? Accelerating gold incomes makes combat faster because for most champions, items provide a lot more damage than they provide durability. One of the most interesting results from the durability update was that players reported significant improvements in matchmaking quality, which was extremely impressive because we didn't even touch matchmaking. We just slowed down combat enough that actions are more readable, and your full set of skills mattered more than your reflexes. So in the interest of making combat more readable, lowering the amount of snowballing in the game, and overall making the game more fun to play, we hope, we've taken 5 to 15% of stat efficiency off of every legendary item in the game, or almost every legendary item. The recurring goal for these changes was to slow down the pace of the fights. Champions should move more slowly to reward proper positioning. Have more downtime between actions, so each one matters more, and only have access to significant burst damage if their champion is built around bursting their opponents. Let's break down the changes by class. For AP champions, we made Burst Mage itemization have less ability haste while keeping high AP and magic penetration. Meanwhile, other mages will still have ability haste options, whether they're mana or non-mana users across squishy or beefier archetypes. We also generally lowered the amount of magic resist on non-tank items to make squishy champions have a harder time surviving AP burst thresholds. For fighters, we pushed larger differences among skirmisher, diver, and juggernaut items. We targeted around 20% power budget into defense for skirmisher items, and closer to 50% for juggernauts, with most items falling in between those marks. To hit those goals, we raised the health on several diver and juggernaut items, to make sure they stood out as clearly beefier than other classes in the game. So that's nice. Because skirmishers and casters also got Cyrilla's Grudge back, while Black Cleaver was shifted to be more appealing to divers. We also changed tank items to have more resistances, which would make them more appealing for fighters who find themselves needing to frontline. Lastly, we nerfed sources of movement speed cost on movement speed on most other classes, meaning fighters are more likely to have the mobility edge in combat. Interesting. I mean, tanks, looking good. There's not as much to say about ADCs since they mostly have damage and more damage, but we've generally lowered the amount of level scaling in their items since they already multiply each other with gold better than other item systems. They are one of the only ranged classes with consistent access to movement speed, but that's been lowered as well. tank items, you know what I feel here is like Ashe, Kog'Maw champions without dashes are gonna be like not played at all. Tank items are the least changed class of items and have been pushed more towards their resistances. The first effect this will have is to let tanks feel that they can hold up their lane opponents for longer, as their items will perform their roles much better. The second effect is that this will make it more appealing to many melee classes who get health in several of their core items. AD assassins are receiving item changes pretty similar to those of AP burst mages. AD and lethality values haven't changed much, but ability haste and item active scaling was nerfed to make assassins rely more on their individual spellcasts and finding that first correct target. Enchanters generally got their items simplified, stripping out mechanics that added power but weren't the primary draw of the item. They've lost the ability to give allies bonus move speed outside of Shirelias and generally lost AP, making them a bit worse offensively while having relatively less impact on their supporting aspects. Okay, that's good. Overall, these changes are intended to reduce the amount of movement speed and ability haste in the game, reduce burst access for non-burst classes, lower overall damage, and increase the amount of durability items give relative to their other stats. With less efficient items, a champion's individual strength should really shine in a way that they haven't in a while. The game should also be less snowbally, as gold tends to snowball much more than experience does. Our hope is that going forward, combat is more skill expressive, and that fights are more readable with slightly slower champions, fewer spellcasts, and more willingness to be a tank, or at least become tankier. So this is nice. I quite like that. I think the damage in League has been too much for the past, 10 seasons. Back in Season 5, you could have fights that lasted for 40, 50 seconds. Nowadays, a League team fight lasts for 5 to 10. Or if you're fighting someone, you're almost instantly gonna die. Every death timer, it's CC equals death timer. You get CC'd, you die. I didn't find it fun. So this is gonna make League more fun for me at the very least. Next up, we have the much requested change, the return of lethal tempo. Originally, lethal tempo proved to be quite problematic because of how it lets players skip itemizing attack speed. And while this change was net positive for the item system, we heard a lot of player feedback. The champions who favored lethal tempo felt like they didn't have a great alternative rune to take. Now that we've had time to adjust itemization without the shadow of lethal tempo looming over all attack speed items, we're re-adding a modified version that maintains the spirit of the rune. It should still support heavy attack speed users, but without also pushing attack speed itemization, or pushing out. It still gives stacking attack speed when attacking enemy champions, but now that attack speed no longer scales up with your level. Instead, once you reach max stacks, your attacks will deal bonus damage on hit, which scales with both your level and your bonus attack speed. We expect many of the previous users to also appreciate this version of lethal tempo, but be less bound to it in a way that warp their play and itemization. So that's cool. That's cool. So you get on hit damage at the end of the lethal tempo, when you really proc it, you get attack speed, and the higher your level and attack speed is, or your level and your bonus attack speed, those on hits are gonna deal more damage, which, on certain champions that run Master Yi is gonna pop off with this one, isn't it? You get the on hits, the Q on hits. Champions like Kog'Maw would do really well with it. Basically anything that, keeps auto attacking. I can see it work on Kai'Sa really well as well. So we got Biscuit Delivery. We've thought a lot about mana availability in the rune system. You can get a ton of mana from runes now, which in turn makes mana items matter less. While we're okay with items being weaker, we don't want them to be wholly unnecessary. In order to cut down how much free mana champions can get, we're removing both the max mana as well as the mana restoration from biscuits, shifting to a version with max HP and more missing health. Other mana runes in the system require champions to interact with the opponents to have value and restore mana. But Biscuits was the exception to this. This non-interactive lane pattern enabled by Biscuits isn't something we're too happy with. So these changes should address these problems. So now, you can get Biscuits on champions just for the max HP as well. We're gonna have to see how much max HP this is gonna be, right? I mean, I could run Maokai top lane and run Biscuits and have this extra max HP or Scion or, whatever. And maybe, like, depending on, it says more missing health restored, right? So maybe we could stay in lane much longer. Quality of life improvements. It's no secret there's a lot to learn in League, and while some of us have years of experience that taught us to pop potions as the opponent's ignite is slowly ticking down in a desperate attempt to survive by 5 health, not everyone that plays League is a veteran. With that in mind, we looked at a lot of player feedback and set out to solve a few pain points for players learning the game. If you're a veteran, these might not be something you need, but you might actually find some helpful. I've been playing since season 2 and still leave base without buying sometimes. You know what? That's not wrong. I do that as well. I leave base without buying, especially if I'm distracted with something like look at stream or whatever. Learning items builds can be difficult for new players. Now that some of us are item connoisseurs, we can browse a shop and even use secret phrases to find items. Through that, when you're learning the game, the item shop is daunting. Starter items, basic items, epic items, legendary items, not knowing what components build into what, it's a lot. Not to mention newer players buying components for different full items simply because they didn't know better. Sure, there's a lot of, like when I first started playing, I didn't want to go back unless I had enough money for a full item. That wasn't, like back in 2009, but goddamn. And I built BF Sword on Alistar and every AD item, and I was disappointed when my Alistar wasn't holding the sword. There's a lot of skill that goes into itemizing correctly. You don't want players to fall behind simply because they're splitting their gold down different item paths. Enter item queuing. With this, we have a new addition to your HUD, which is your item build queue. When you're in the item shop, now you will have ability to queue an item build. This saves the item for you and displays it in your HUD. This new HUD element will display the item currently in your build queue, your gold progression towards your queued item, and also the hotkey to open the shop. Gone are the days you have to remind your friend to press P to open their shop. Nice. Wait, so if you recall... no, you're still gonna have to press P, okay. As you play and gain gold, you'll see a progress bar to indicate your gold versus the total cost of the item. When you return to Fountain to purchase, you'll see that button for queuing the item now becomes a purchase components. This is a one-click purchase that will automatically purchase all the components you can currently afford with the amount of gold that you have, prioritizing the most expensive component you can currently afford. Once that's made, you will see an update in the HUD to reflect the purchase made by the color change on your progress. When you have enough gold to complete your build, you will see a new state that lets you know, hey, you have enough gold to finish this build. At any point, you can swap your choice of build by selecting replace item in the shop. This will then update your current progress to reflect the new item you're looking to build. In addition to this, we've added another quality of life update, which included updated sound effects to let you know you're purchasing components versus the entire item. We have also given our shopkeepers some love. Did you know clicking on them opens the shop? Yep. Hasn't that always been a thing? Don't forget your items. Have you ever run out of the fountain at the start of the game only to get spamming because you forgot to purchase items, only to realize that you're stuck in a bad spot because going back will ruin your timing? We have, and realize that we should do something about it. Now, if you exit the fountain at the start of the game without purchasing, you will get an alert notification and your gold counter will blink yellow to let you know that you forgot to purchase. You can then quickly turn around and get your items before rushing back to lane, saving you precious time and embarrassment. That's nice. Objective announcements. We have made improvements to our epic objective announcements. Now, when an epic objective, such as Dragon or Baron, will spawn, you will see a banner announcement letting you know the objective is live. The goal here is to increase visibility on when epic objectives are live and reduce burden on timers and pings in chat. Potion Commotion and Biscuit Blast. Have you ever finished recalling on half health, only to look at your item bar and realize you have 150 gold worth of potions you forgot to use? Now when you're low on health and out of combat, you will get a reminder to drink me. This reminder will let you know it's a good time to consume one of these items. Okay, not in my jungle. We all know the early game players have a lot of things they're focusing on and setting up, like that cannon minion crashing into your tower. This means that sometimes our attention is divided and we can miss crucial moments, such as the early jungle invasion. To help our jungler friends, we have a new system, generated ping, that triggers when combat in your jungle occurs. This has an audio and minimap VFX letting you know that your jungler is currently being invaded, so you can quickly pivot your plans and see if you can turn an invade into an early advantage. Damn. Wait, that's kind of crazy though. So wait, does this is this only when you have vision, or is that when you don't have vision as well? Because that's kind of crazy. Sneaking enemy objectives is not going to be possible anymore then. Interesting. Have you ever made a mistake in League? No, well, for those of us that have, like me, we're adding a new interactive emote that can let your teammates know the deep feeling of regret you're experiencing as the enemy laner walks away with 10 health. Because you didn't think you needed to ignite them. Don't let it beat you up. Ignite was going to be key to getting the second kill on them after they teleported back to lane. Your teammate didn't know that, so simply pressing the I key and the My Bad interactive emote will pop up to express your sincerest apologies. Then your teammate can respond by using the same interactive emote, and just like that, all transgressions have been forgiven. The two, okay, and become the best of friends. Yeah, that's not gonna work out like they think it is. I mean, we have the Yuki now, which is the fist bump, and whenever you press a Yuki and you try to fist bump someone, usually it ends up with this, right? So okay, so that's all the big changes for Split 3. So I guess we're gonna have to wait and see what the item changes are gonna be that they're gonna make. I mean, 5 to 15% off of everything. So I'm guessing that the low stat items are gonna lose 5%, and the higher stat items are gonna lose 15. But I really like the changes. I think reducing the costs is great. I mean, reducing the stats is great. I think there's way too much snowballing. There's way too much one shots in the game right now, and I think it's super anti-fun dying in CC timers. So that's awesome. The way they're making the changes seems great as well. I mean, burst mage. If you're a burst mage, you can still burst, but if you're not a burst mage, you can't burst anymore, which is awesome. For the fighters, you know, getting more, leaning more into the juggernaut is nice. I think tanks might be meta. The way that it's described here, like you get more health and stuff. I think tank meta is gonna come back. I mean, for top lane at the very least. Enchanters getting less damage is great. AD assassins work the same as mages, which is also great. Like no more one shots by random non-assassin, just ADs. The lethal tempo is super duper interesting. I'm probably gonna play that. I love on-hit damage. I love on-hit builds. For anyone who's watched any of my videos, you probably know that I love on-hit stuff. So definitely lethal tempo is gonna be super amazing. The biscuits switching from mana and going into the max HP, very very interesting. Again, like that's more survivability that you can get out of a biscuit, which is kind of crazy. Like instead of like a little bit of extra mana, you get a little bit of extra health. I can live with this change, and then you can get like, you know, an AP item, because like AP items are, I mean AP item, mana items are not built that often anymore in this day and age. Before we had mana potions back in the day. Nowadays there's no mana potions anymore. They should bring back mana potions, man. Honestly, why not? We had mana potions for so long. Then the item queuing is very interesting for like newer players, like people who don't really know what to build, or like you can queue it up, and then, you know, the P button is going to be very obvious that you can, you know, open the shop now, or at least buy the item. I think if you press P, it's going to buy the item, right? So that's cool. Don't forget your items is good as well. Like, how many times has it happened that either you or one of your teammates walks out of base into the jungle without an item, right? Especially like, you know, coming back from making a coffee, coming back from the toilet, coming back from, you know, whatever, your mom's yelling at you, your wife's yelling at you, whatever, and then you look back at your screen, you're already walking, and then you have no item. Now you're gonna know. So the drink me on the potion, that's kind of like a whatever change for me. I don't think this is very important. I mean, you're always gonna look at your inventory and be like, oh yeah, I have a potion, right? The like the drink me, it could potentially be annoying. I hope they can, you know, you can turn this off. That'd be nice. Not in my jungle. This is probably the most interesting change. So you're gonna know when you're being invaded. I think that is kind of a bad change if you're a jungler that likes invading. because you kind of want to like be secretive about it, and you know how it goes. Usually in your team doesn't follow up, their team follows up, right? On the other hand, you know, if they know you're invading and you know the enemy is on the other side of the jungle, and then the enemy is going to be pinging his laners to try and do something about it, but then your lane can push. So, you know, it all depends on how you look at it, right? And then the my bad, I mean, this is kind of useless. This is just like whatever. Anyways, guys, that was the quick rundown of the new season that is coming up, and you know, I'm kind of looking forward to it. I think there's some interesting changes, and dude, nerfs to everything. Hell yes, sign me up. If you enjoyed the video, boys, hit that subscribe button.